welcome this fine morning to the MSS Puerto Rico. It's a great pleasure to be here. You are all very, very welcome to this amazing step in the MSS World Tour. It's a pleasure to welcome Temi Adebambo, Head of Security Solutions Architecture North America at AWS. Can you give us a flavor of what we might like to explore today?
Yeah, so as you said earlier, we want to explore, the evolution of the security leader role, whether it's CISO or CRO or other things it might evolve into, and how that plays with the secure MSP and MSSP, especially for the Puerto Rico market, and understand from the panelists a little bit about what makes that area unique and what that relationship should look like in the future.
It's delightful to be at the MSS Puerto Rico and joining Temi Adebambo on our panel. We are very pleased to welcome Pedro Martinez, Chief Information Officer at the ZENUS Bank, Leonel Cortes, Chief Delivery Officer at Infolock, Vincent de Hoyos, Information Security Director, Alpine Health Technologies, Nitza Santini, Director of Business Operations at Onuvo, and Miguel, Director, Focus Risk Management Specialists. I'm really pleased to see so many of you here, and I will leave you in Temi's capable hands.
Yeah, nice to see all of you, and welcome to this MSSP forum today. We're in Puerto Rico, at least virtually. I'm feeling the vibe, and I would like to understand. Does it make sense to talk about the threat landscape in Puerto Rico? Is it unique in some ways, or is it very much the same as what we have all over the world in terms of cyber threats? Is there a unique aspect to the threat landscape in Puerto Rico?
If I can start, good morning, everyone. Nitza Santini from Onuvo, based out of Puerto Rico, and we are a true MSP. So I'm thrilled to be here and for the invitation. Thank you so much to you guys for that. In my role in operations recently in this company, we are seeing a lot of people starting to ask for things, but I see that there's still a lot of movement towards education. And as things start to progress, when we start seeing the evolution of the attacks and the threat that provides to the customers, they start asking a little bit more questions, especially regulated industries. But we are a mirror of the US, which is unique to our situation because we are a gateway to Latin America and the US. And so we do receive a lot of impact from the US side because we are a US territory. So in that respect, there is definitely room to talk about that.
Excellent. Any other perspectives or opinions on the threat landscape in Puerto Rico from anyone else on the panel?
Yes, I'm also an MSP here, Vincent. And we have a lot of customers who are kind of worried with the trends that are happening, and they are, calling, for example, our company to buff, when they say beef up my security because I'm kind of afraid or something that's happened. Just make sure you do, everything that is possible within everything that we have contract with you guys, so it can help us keep us safe with this trend that is happening right now.
Yeah, definitely. Literally seeing that. I would say that's something that's happening in all territories. Even in the US, folks are gearing up, and in Europe, the same thing. Folks are gearing up. They definitely need more help than perhaps they've asked for, at least in the past. I've been seeing that. Any other person want to speak to maybe some unique aspects?
Yes. Actually, I would like to echo a little bit of what Nick says, because I think that's a very important topic for us to dig a little bit deeper. Certainly, Puerto Rico is in a very unique situation because it's part of the union in a sense that most of the actual infrastructures, political aspects of what governs Puerto Rico is very similar to what we face here in the United States. But their cultural vinculation with Latin America runs incredibly deep. And that presents some level of variation in the behavior of the people in terms of how do they deal with the security postures, how do they deal with regulations, how do they deal with best practices, for example. And all of that needs to be taken into consideration when you are trying to put together a security structure, a security postures, a strategy in order to address the challenges, right, that are out there. In terms of these challenges, I would say that they are the same all over the world. What makes the difference in the approach that we take is precisely taking into consideration, as Nitza very accurately pointed out, right, around how the cultural influence the measurements that we need to put in place. And I feel that any person that is in a position of a decision maker position, kind of like an executive, in this particular case, a CISO, should contemplate this as part of whatever strategy they want to bring up to the table.
Yeah, definitely. I think both of those points do resonate very well. So we've seen a lot of cloud adoption going on. At least the last 2 years has been even higher than normal. How has that affected the business landscape across the board in Puerto Rico? Anyone want to speak to what they're seeing from a cloud adoption side?
Yeah, sure. Pedro Martinez, good morning, everybody. So I will give you the perspective from a heavily regulated industry, such as banking industry. So being having experience in the US, specific, one of the big 5 banks, and then now in Puerto Rico, I can tell you that some of the similarities and the vulnerability has been similar on the risk and the assessment that has to be done. However, going into the cloud, which is basically, especially for a digital bank, 10, 12 years ago was something where regulators couldn't understand, what were the implications of moving MPI, PCI, all the regulated data into the cloud. Since then, regulators have been informed. So one of the aspects of having a strong framework or a management of risk, this is what we're in the business of, managing risk, it is to ensure that the regulators are informed of what you're doing, that we're following standards that are currently frameworks, followed by the world, in this case, NIS or PCI DSS and so on. But more importantly, that we're communicating and doing what we're doing this morning, which is getting informed from others in the industry, from managed service providers, especially on the security side, and also peers in the industry. So that's my 2 points in there.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a lot of maturity in terms of the frameworks from the early days. We now have more and more regulated organizations moving in, because the regulated frameworks have evolved a little bit to be able to accommodate cloud. And that's definitely driving some of that growth. I see that at AWS all the time. I think someone else wanted to add something to that.
Yes, hi, good morning to all. My clients are mainly financial industry and health industry. And in the past 5 years, they're adopting the cloud services, and they were not used to that. So the security used to be in-house with a group, information security groups, cybersecurity groups. Now that they're moving into the cloud, it's a completely different scenario, and the security has to change. And that's something that in Puerto Rico, we're not mature enough to deal with that completely. So I see very important the part of the managed security service providers who have that experience, and they have the experience and the knowledge to handle security in the cloud. So it's very important to benefit from those services that we in Puerto Rico right now, we have a lack of security experts. So there are not too many experts available. They're very expensive, and they don't have all the experience to manage that security in the cloud. So it's very important for me, the part and the function of the MSSP.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a skill shortage in cybersecurity, and I think that's global, and it's only going to grow from all the projections I see, because we will have more companies and organizations moving to using cloud services, and we will not be able to graduate as many professionals to close those gaps up, especially in the security area. So that's going to continue. When you think about leaders, though, when we shift the conversation towards leaders, and not just the technical side. Or maybe that is part of what we should think about. How does a leader find the technical balance and the business acumen to deal with cloud security and managing the MSSP relationship today? How do you suggest leaders find that business balance, that acumen balance between technical and business side?
I would say that that's the $1 million question right there, Temi, because going back to a point that Miguel did, certainly we couldn't stress more the need that having an MSSP as an entity to support any security posture is. That is a fact. But we also have to take into consideration from the executive perspective that the first and foremost goal of the role is to identify what are the assets that we need to protect, right? That actually helps you prioritize whatever strategies that we want to put in place, whatever investments you need to put in place. And most importantly, it helps you basically build a business case that you're going to present to the other executives that are not that technically savvy on how much beneficial would be getting all of this help, getting all of these tools, getting all of this infrastructure, and getting all the knowledge, right? So how do we go about that? What is really important these days is data. If we go actually through the evolution of the architecture for the past 30 years, we all started with mainframe, and mainframe was, to a certain extent, a very control environment where the only type of security that you needed to be aware of was physical security and access control. But then in the 90s, there was this big disruptor, client-server architecture, right? That brought a lot of flexibility, but at the same time, it brought much more distributed, basically allocation of the data. The whole network security framework needed to change. That was the beginning of what we now know as network security, right? A lot of routers. There was the beginning, basically the born of the firewalls. I'm actually a huge Pix firewall fan. If anyone, I'm showing my age a little bit here, right?
I am. Actually, Leonel, if I can add to what you're saying, because I and Miguel, you hit on so many important things. I just kind of wanted to summarize a little bit of what I took from that. Going to the question that you made, how do we direct this conversation to CISOs, is basically understanding what are the focal points for the CISO in that environment, in that company. They could be regulated or unregulated. So the way that they go about security and protecting data, like Leonel mentions, and protecting the network with firewalls, you need to understand if the CISO has challenges. And what we're seeing is labor shortage, not enough resources. MSPs come in to fill the gap. So we come in as an alliance to help promote the tasks and the reports and the work that needs to go into the daily management of these infrastructure and devices, period. It's ongoing, it's constant, and there are not enough people on current IT teams in-house in order to complete all of those functions and be in compliance. So when you partner up with an MSP, we understand where you need the help, where you need your resources to be focused. We don't have a labor shortage when it comes to providing the service, but it's very hard to have a direct hire in-house and retain them to do all of these things. So my team will come in to help all sorts of problems and have a lot of combined knowledge and experience to go into problem solving, whereas problem solving with a direct hire team stays within that team. And so there's no evolution. Maybe the growth isn't as fast as what's actually happening in terms of the threat landscape.
Yeah. That's a very good point, Nitza. And sorry actually for interrupting, Temi. But I would like to add that that's the point that I wanted actually to get into, that protecting the boundaries, the perimeter of the network has been another disruption that has been introduced by the cloud architectures, right? We have to think a little bit beyond that point and make the MSSPs evolve into a figure that not only contemplate analysis of the threat, but also analysis of the business. Where is the data located, right? How is this data used? How is the data used by different departments? How the organizations actually store, and what tools they use to basically manipulate this data? What is the value of this data? And that actually requires another breed of MSSP. What I'm basically saying here is that there should be like this, there's two sides of this coin. We still need to be worried about threat protection. That is a fact, right? But in order to be an efficient, holistic entity, we have to have a similar structure, a similar entity that monitors in the same fashion that you have described, Nitza, but more from the data protection perspective. There's another risk that is not necessarily associated with hackers, insider trades, for example. And those are a little bit more difficult to evaluate, to identify as part of a regular SOC entity, because what a SOC does, they need to analyze patterns to identify events. Those incidents may or may not be, those events may or may not be incidents. However, from the business perspective, one single event could be incredibly damaging if it's one person sending like 10,000 credit card numbers out of the blue to several different Gmail accounts. That may or may not be related, or may or may not be identified for threat protection as an anomaly, but it most certainly will be identified as an event to be taken care of from a more specialized eye, someone that is looking at this from the business perspective. Oh, this is not based on what my conversations with the sales department says that they should be. The escalation process at that point also differs a little bit, because from the threat protection, we obviously have to implement procedures to identify, isolate, and take actions whenever a particular incident has been identified. From the data management perspective, the dynamic changes a little bit. The escalation point must involve someone in the business. So the mindset of the individuals, and that's basically the point that I wanted to make, from an MSSP that deals with threat protection is significantly different from a mindset of an individual that leads an analysis from an MSSP oriented to data protection. And that's a point that I just wanted to make up, basically to bring up, because I see that in the future, the leaders needs to contemplate both aspects. They need to protect from the threat aspect, but they also need to be very careful in introducing a strategy to protect the data aspects, to keep the maturity, to keep the business informed.
And sorry, Tommy, a quick, I just want to add up to Nitza and Leonel and Miguel, and Pedro probably agree with me. That's why as an MSSP, we have to agree with the CISO and do what is called data classification, because probably they don't want to put everything up in cloud, just what is confidential. We have to classify the data to make sure what we're going to protect and how we're going to protect it, and where we're going to store that data. So data classification is really important for the, to have our, the MSSP talk to the CISO and let them know, what data has to be, how to classify the data and to be protected.
Yeah, so, and that's why I wanted to jump in, because as Leonel continued to expand, it's clear that the responsibility continues to grow. And as data becomes more paramount and important to organizations, the responsibility would grow potentially out of the realm of just what we've been doing in terms of threat analysis and identification and remediation. And I'm wondering is the CISO the person that truly owns this responsibility as the ultimate leader, or is this a shared responsibility across the C-suite that maybe go all the way up to the board? Because as Leonel continues to talk about this and the data use and the data impact and the business side, which is becoming more of a reality, is the answer really the CISO, the one person? Are you just going to do a data classification with the CISO and get the results and then go do MSSP work? Or does the breadth of the conversation need to expand beyond a single leader to other leaders that may exist, or does the CISO just need to evolve? And that's, I would like to see your takes on that. Is it the CISO evolving, or is it other leaders getting engaged with security and data protection?
Miguel?
My recommendation to my customers and to everybody that has this situation is that the CISO is responsible of governance, risk, compliance, besides security. Okay, and security might fall into the risk part of the GRC term. Okay, and his responsibility in security should be communicated to a risk management committee of the company, and he should be part of that committee. But the responsibility for security and risk lies on that committee. And that committee, we should have the COO, we should have the CEO, we should have the CTO, we should have legal, we should have audit, we should have compliance, and the responsibility of the whole security of the company and the risk are shared in that committee. Okay, that's the way I see it.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead. Pedro here, just to elaborate on what Miguel said, is actually, typically the board will be ultimately responsible, but will be multiple committees that will have to have multiple pairs of eyes in looking at this. One of the important things, and having got the chance to start a bank from scratch, I don't recommend it to anybody. It is that they're not only the frameworks, the policies and everything in place, but the typical aspects of any business is KPIs. All right, so I have a CISO. How do I make sure the CISO is doing the work well? And that's why we rely on managed service providers for third-party certifications to ensure they're doing the right thing with external audits. Not only the internal one, but the external are very important. And today, especially in the heavily regulated industry, is mandatory. One of the aspects as well is cyber insurance. You know, how do you manage that risk so your customers or your shareholders are at peace that in case something happened, because something will happen eventually. Now, the magnitude of what will happen, it will be up to the framework, will be up to chance sometimes, but we have to ensure that we have the proper mitigation procedures. So for the banking industry now, it's mandatory to have cyber insurance as of this year to ensure that we are qualified, enforcing the frameworks, that we have a mechanism for us to combat cyber threats. And the insurance company, even, they will tell you, well, I want to see your most recent audit, your more recent third-party certification. This is where the MSPs comes involved, not only in education, but also ensuring that we have certified and mitigate all the risk.
Yeah, so I think I saw everybody nodding that this was a collective thing. It's not just the CISO, and that I share that same belief. You know, we need to really take security and broaden the aperture when we talk to executive. But then, what does that mean as MSSP in terms of the quality of the qualities that you have to develop relationship with the leaders? So what qualities would improve that relationship? Because today, you know, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I would say most MSSPs have a relationship with the CISO or the security leaders. But as we define this problem today, we said it's a committee and the security goes across the board. So how can we bridge that gap? Because we really want that ownership across the board and the support for the MSSPs. We have to have those folks understand the value that MSSP can play. And how can we do that? Because we don't want to depend on the CISO. We all noted that the CISO is not the only and center person. We need to expand that relationship. So how are some of you guys doing it? How do you recommend others do it? And how do you expect these leaders to work with you?
Do you mind if I start really quickly, because it's going to be in opposition to probably my panelists. So in Onuvo, as an MSP, we serve the whole threshold of SMB, small business, mid-market, and enterprise, but largely SMB. And I don't have necessarily most of those customers even have somebody in IT, like in-house IT. So they depend solely on MSPs to take care of all of their needs in terms of backup and compliance and security. So we're not talking just about the productivity of users. We're talking about liability. And mostly it's going to rely on the owner Human resources is not exempt from this conversation. Neither is accounting, and all of these people have to be part of these decisions. Why? Because if I recommend something for security or for backup, that's not solely a decision that the owner is going to make. There's cost involved, there's risk involved, there's a human factor. At the end of the day, these are humans trying to work and being bombarded by all of these things. And now we are having to prepare users who are non-technical to identify threats and place this unusual burden on users now. So our job is to really understand what our customers do and where they want to focus. I don't want to push my agenda. I was in IT sales for a long time, and that is not the way to go. IT needs to serve a purpose. And as long as we're focused on that, we're going to be good.
Anyone else wants to?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead, and Pedro, go ahead and respond. Actually, from a customer's perspective, I don't disagree with anything what Nitza says. So actually, it's pretty spot on. And if I understood your question, going through the other side of that, which is those folks that are going to be performing the work, there's some things that as a CISO looked into when building a team, whether it's going to be internally or what's going to be hired through MSP for providing services, managed along the way. It is, first of all, being proactive. Have good, robust communication skills, because I need to understand, what exactly is best for my organization. Strong work ethics, it's internally to ensure that, hey, we have alerts, we have things that we can better up. Let's make sure that we don't break the rules. Let's make sure we don't have exemptions and be arbitrary on the way we address those risks. Solid technical background. You really have to have a technical background to know exactly where you're trying to secure. If it's a bank, if it's a hospital, if it's just a manufacturing company, etc., and be very organized. To me, that's the primary five, I will say, characteristic of that leader that will be in security. And as you put the team together, there are others such as business acumen, self-development, to ensure that those folks are getting certified, learning the latest trends, learning the latest methods of mitigating those risks, and so on. And finally, I think that we all look for mini leaders or other leaders that can bring them up. So ability to lead others is very important. And that's what I will look in MSP to educate me, to grab me by the hands, to ensure that I'm following the right approach and I understand my own risk.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said, Pedro. I would like to add that, and this is more like a step more than an actual strategy, setting the right expectations from the beginning. It's the most important thing that any MSSP can do, right? In our particular case, we do MSSP specifically for data protection, right? We deal with DLP, data classification, and that basically opens the door for us to have conversations with a lot of folks other than just the technical folks, right? We get involved with legal, we get involved with compliance, we get involved with HR. But what actually have differentiated us is when we started actually implementing a customer success practice. We now have embedded into our processes, right, a mechanism to identify right out of get-go with whoever our primary point of contact is, for the most part, the CISOs, right? These are the things that I consider important. Then you assess and validate alongside with your partner, because that is actually what is being developed at that point, a partnership, right? Whether or not it's a realistic approach, and then just lay that out in front of them. Listen, based on what you told me, based on the deadlines that you have, this is what can be done. Let's then establish a plan and move forward with it. And that's a plan that can be communicated. You can, I consider that any valuable MSSP is someone that will provide not only recommendations, they will walk the walk with you. They should actually be there, as Pedro mentioned, to support you, to advise you at any step of the way.
I would like to add that for big companies or enterprises that are regulated, it's pretty easy to sell them, the need for MSSP and security. It's easy. But when you're talking about small business, that's a whole different scenario, okay? Because They don't know nothing about IT, probably the owner or the manager or the and they don't know nothing about security and the vulnerabilities and the threats that are there besides what they see on the news or they read on the paper. So I expect the MSSP to explain to the owner or to the director or manager that doesn't know anything about this, okay, this is the reality, what is going on. This is the data that you manage. Like Leonel said, data is essential. This is how it affects your business. Without this, your business cannot run. So you're not gonna be able to continue doing business. Sell them this first so they understand what is really the need for this service. What is the need for security? And after that, then you can, okay, depending on the customer and the size and their needs and the data, then you can make recommendations on how can you help them. But I think it's very important to communicate and to transfer that knowledge to the persons in charge of the business, because they don't know too much about this, especially small business.
Yeah, I would like to add that I agree with my colleagues here, and Nitza probably knows that when you get the user calling you, taking stating, "Oh, you're making this hard for me to work," and that's why the communications is really important with this end user, and try to make it as simple as possible and tell them how the threat would affect the company. Like Pedro said, one of the 5 communications. So we have to explain to the end user how everything works and why is the reason behind it.
Oh, Temi, sorry, you're on mute.
Yes, I just recognized.
It had to happen at least once.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one last question here. So do you envision the CISOs and security leaders of tomorrow to basically be a translator between the end customers and the MSP? Is that really where we expect that tomorrow's leaders will be, or even today's leaders?
Let me start from the Pedro here. I don't think I agree with that. I see the CISO and also the leaders in charge of security more of product managers. We're the ones providing a product, which is security, which is risk mitigation to my own company in this case, where I need to ensure that I know what that roadmap is going to look like. I need to know what the latest trends are so I can modify my product. And I want to communicate to them so they actually buy into my product, so I get more budget to execute on those things that are important as the business grows. So from that aspect, I think that I don't fully agree with that, but it's I think more of a product perspective, so we can again give them what it will mitigate the business needs.
Nice. Any other thoughts on it? Comments?
I would say that IT acts as a facilitator, just as the MSP. And we're both facilitators for the same purpose, which is to make sure that the company that we work for and we're working for is going to be at least starting to adopt very basic, very important services to protect their data and to add security. There's nothing infallible. I think that in conversations with customers, it's so important. One of my colleague panelists had mentioned something about setting expectations. I think it was Leonel. And I think that is absolutely 100% on the nail. Setting expectations is very important, because once a customer adopts MSP services, I think that they believe that ransomware can't happen or that data loss can't happen. And that's not the truth. What we're setting in place are mechanisms so that if it does happen, because it will happen, it's not a matter of if, it's when, which is basically the model for the industry. We're looking to protect. We're looking to make that downtime less or remove the downtime. Proven restores of backups are essential. We've done it. Some people can't do it. Sometimes it doesn't work. So making sure that everything is in place, but it's actually being tested, is being documented. There's shared information across the board, and that if there is something to be done that is critical, have that conversation with the board and with the C-level.
Yeah. I would argue, but basically what I'm going to say might be like what my two colleagues actually explained with different words, right? But I also agree with Pedro that the role of the CISO shouldn't be to be a proxy of sorts between what his team does and then try to translate and digest it for people that understand less technology. That's certainly a factor to consider, but that role actually goes beyond that. They are facilitators more than just proxies. That they are the ones that supposed to put there the strategy, in which case we are going to participate on that vision, on that strategy as an MSSP provider. Whether it's from the threat protection perspective or the data protection perspective, we are there to see that vision, understand that vision, and then execute on the vision for the CISO. But you still need a champion within the organization that is the one that holds the flag, right? Let's put a very simple example. We identified a couple of events, right? That as a result of the analysis and a lot of conversations with the area, with the CISO, with HR, has been determined that was the result of a whole department that is not entirely sure of how to use the security tools. There is not better user awareness training flag for that, right? But who is the one that needs to push, to do the actual push for that to happen? That one that understands the business well enough to make that happen. We can give him enough advice based on what we understand of the circumstances, and what we understand of the business on what the best way to structure this is. But ultimately, it will be the CISO, the one that will present this to the boards, highlight the importance of this. We might be behind him, whispering in his ear, hey, dude, you're doing great. Way to go. But we need that internal champion for any security effort to really succeed. And it's not just a proxy.
Yep, yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of weight on the CISO here as we talk about, really evolution of a CISO. Just to recap, communication is huge. Going beyond the technical landscape and understanding the business side and the data and the importance of the data is huge. Bringing in others and expanding to the C-suite as well as other stakeholders, including finance, as Nitza says, is important. And finally, being the champion inside to really drive a vision and carry the flag for the organization in order to relate to the MSSPs that can provide the help, especially in this times when skills are short and opportunities to move to the cloud are increasingly available and getting way better as you look at the financial model of moving to the cloud versus not. So we'll continue to see this, and the goal will continue to evolve, and the MSSP will continue to play a bigger part. I thank all my panelists for their time today. It's been a great 40 minutes, flew right by. It's been a great session, and really thank you guys all for being a part of this. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
So much. Yes,
Thank
wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you, Temi, for being such a great moderator. It's been a pleasure having you on. I know we do a lot in Miami, so this is a great cross-pollination. But please join me in thanking Temi, Nitza, Leonel, Vincent, Pedro, and Miguel with a big virtual round of applause. I have found it. And
thank you.
Thank
It's been
you
a pleasure
so
actually
much.
to meet you all, my panelists.
And I'll put
Same here.
Likewise. We should actually meet up. I mean, if you guys are in Miami, actually, you guys have to come to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I can make
that
happen. It's a short
Come on over.
well, I'll put you back in the audience when I transition to the next session. But please do put your profiles in the chat if you like, and just link with each other. And I think that would be a great progression.
Yeah, I was going to suggest you guys can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Talk to you guys soon.
Here.
See you soon. I'll put you in the audience.
Thank you.
Marvelous. I really enjoyed that. And, thank you to all your comments as well. One thing I would say is if you want to chat to me on my own, that's absolutely perfect. However, if you chat to all panelists and attendees, or everyone, then we can all chat together. I've added our YouTube channel thus far. Now, I noticed there is a very interesting question in the chat from Nicholas, and what I might do is use that as one of the basis for our next session, which is a more informal fireside chat. So I've just invited to the stage. I'm very pleased to invite to the stage Luis E. Mojica, future workplace and cybersecurity lead, Central American and Caribbean region at SoftwareONE. And, you know, it's very interesting because with these events, we're trying to blend the MSP, MSS, and end customer perspectives, and we want to ask the question: how do we improve it? How do we make it more secure? In that includes the topic of making an MSP and MSS. Should it happen? Is it happening? Helping MSS players help MSPs, and does the end customer even care about any of that?
So yeah, no, basically I was saying that I've been working for SoftwareONE like 3 years. You know, my career, I've been working as a consultant for 10 years, giving consultancy for Puerto Rico customers, and I have been working for a lot of transitions and in technology, right? And right now I'm focusing more in security, and it's very interesting seeing how the things are evolving, right? And I was hearing the guys in the last call, and it was amazing how you know, we all agree in the same thing, right? That we need to think as an MSP in provide solutions that really brings value to our customers. But you know, I was going to say I was trying to type in the chat you guys question, but you know, I just wanted to share that for me, you know, there are a couple of things that some of the CISOs or the MSPs in Puerto Rico are not mainly taking too much attention, and it's the resources that they need to hire, right? And the people in security, we all agree that we have a lack of resources in Puerto Rico. But yes, we need to think on people that not only understand security, right? I know it's very important that the security skills that we need to have for this new reality, but they need to understand also about the people, right? The people skills. And why is because right now, you know, we have a new workforce, a new generation of people that are working, and this generation, you know, have the technology in their veins. They need to have technology that makes them, you know, more efficient, more collaborative, and sometimes we go deeper in technology. We think obviously the business wants security, wants to mitigate security risk and compliance, obviously, but sometimes the CISOs are not taking care of the people and the end users, right? And how their people are working to really make the end users adopt the technology that they are bringing, right? So we are working with MSPs. We are bringing the best of technology. We are you know, implementing new things for this new reality. But not every partner, or I'm not seeing some of the MSPs working in the people side, right? Okay, this is the technology, but what is your culture? What is what is the type of generation that you have right now, right? To understand if they are maybe millennials, they are Generation X or whatever. So according to that, we need to then plan an adoption plan for them so they can use in the right way the technology that we are putting in their hands, right? So because at the end, our end users are the first risk that we have, right? So if they don't adopt the technology that we are putting in their hands, then at the end, we are going to keep having risks and threats in the processes that we have. So
that's really key then, because one of the purposes of pivoting with a fireside chat such as this compared to our panel, I mean, I loved our panel. It was beautiful, right? Lovely people.
That was great.
And they're still in the audience. But I want to reflect on some of the ideas coming out, such as the balance between the technical and the business leader. And who better to do that than to ask an engineer, someone with an engineering mindset? And I guess I want to ask, is there something special about today's generations of engineers coming through, perhaps with skills as standard, that maybe more established CISOs don't have?
Well, yes, we need to understand that this generation, we are in the generation of the cloud, right? And the generation that are leading security, or those issues come from all the past generations, that they are coming, they are adopting this new tendency. But this workforce that is coming, these new engineers, they have the cloud in their veins, and they understand everything, right, in terms of the new technology and all that. So that means that the people, the leaders, and the CISOs needs to understand well, this workforce, and understand that they demand new things, right? And sometimes the internal process and the technology that the companies are using right now sometimes is old. And they are not really understanding that those guys that are coming now, they demand new things, new technology. And then when they came out of the university, they basically enter to work in a security department, using all technology. They don't understand processes and everything. But I think there are 4 things that new CISOs need to take care. I mean, if they want to hire people with correct skills, right, to understand these new topics. And these guys need to understand people that I already told. They need to understand how to develop new process, and I mean, internal business process where they expose data, maybe approvals processes, all those automation processes that now there are a lot of companies that are automating, but they need to have those skills also to understand where is the risk in that process, right? If we are automating process, for example, we need to understand if that process will be automated in the same way, in a way that we are going to say something, I don't know, put a button in a application, right, that generate a lot of things. Then okay, what are the spaces and the technology that they are going to use to hit that button, right? And that all involves security, right? And they need to enter in those things, right? In all the business processes, they need to understand spaces. And when I talk spaces, I talk about people that are working from home, are working from the cafe, and working from anywhere. They need to understand their that space, because it's not a matter of put a VPN and then you are okay, then work for anywhere. How is the experience of that end user working with tools, with corporate tools, right? And sometimes that's what I keep saying, that the CISOs need to understand people, right? Their people, their culture, and understand. Yes, go ahead.
But no, I was going to say, isn't that what people accuse engineers of? Isn't that what they say? Yeah. And but yet there is a happy medium, isn't there? Because people say, oh, engineers. Actually, when I say people, who are these people? Often maybe HR types who don't understand what engineers are doing. They say, I want to add value. So in my adding value, I'm going to say you need more communications. And unfortunately, they don't appreciate that engineers speak a very factual language. Like, no one asks you, how do you feel about Kubernetes?
Exactly.
They ask you about facts and figures and numbers. And I wonder if the traditional engineer approach is actually key to improving the relationship between third parties and end customers, because the way that engineers speak is very important and technical, but clear and devoid of emotion and things. Surely that's a good thing.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. They need to understand also the how to translate. In some cases with my customer, what I'm seeing is that sometimes they need to translate the business need in terms of security to a CFO, for example, or another part of the business. And what I'm seeing is that usually the CFO see the Ceso and the CTOs and the technology guys as an investment, or as a not as a oh, I forgot the word, as a not a doesn't understand the value of
cost center. They think of them as a cost center, not an asset.
Exactly. That's the word. They see as a cost, and security is the core of the business at the end. Even they need to understand that security is a budget that sometimes you don't have a return of investment, right? Right away, but it's the most important thing in the business now, because
but then I want to champion the reason we're happy to be in Puerto Rico today. I guess people keep on saying the island is small, talent is limited, and it's being passed between different people, and perhaps maybe that's why third parties are useful. I get that. Everyone gets that, maybe. But surely this gives us an opportunity to allow, especially in Puerto Rico, to allow the technical experts to shine. Surely this is the engineer's moment, scarcity and ability to direct things. So how can the engineers improve the security relationship?
Well, I think that they should not only think in a technical way, right? I think the engineers should usually the security guys are more technical, right? And they want to be working in just the technology. But I think something that will add a lot more for the engineers is prepare yourself in those communication skills, but also the understand the commercial thing of the technology, right? Because sometimes they understand the technology in a technical way, right? But when they want to propose a solution or something, they need to translate that solution into how that solution will solve a pain or a need of the business. And sometimes I'm seeing that the engineers they lack of that skills, right? To translate really that business need into or that technology solution into the really how that solution will benefit the business at the end of the day. So I think the new engineers need to understand that and prepare themselves not only in that. They need to maybe prepare themselves in something like social selling, right? So they can sell, not sell the technology, right? But sell their ideas, right? And how they see the solution. We are in a new world that everything is a solution, right? We can build everything. Everyone wants to build an application or automate a process and I know in security, it's the same. There are a lot of new technology, but sometimes they need to understand that they understand the technology, but they don't know how to translate that to the people, right, in charge of making the things happen.
And especially there is a propensity to push engineers to meet customers now. There are, and everybody knows somebody who lives in a basement, doesn't talk to anyone. I get that, but MSPs are trying to get their engineers out to become sales engineers. Exactly. MSS are trying to get them to be consultative. There is a place for the completely hived off engineer. I get that, but how then do we develop the skills of tomorrow's technical specialist? Because people might say, why are we going down granular, into the world of the engineer? I thought this was about MSPs and MSS and CISOs. why we're investigating it, in my opinion, and I'd be grateful if anyone in the audience disagrees, is because this encapsulates the leader of the future by looking at the engineer of today. Now, I know there are many engineers who never, ever, ever want to be a CISO because it's, not the most fun job at the moment.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how do we train and how do we balance certifications? I think that's the topic, certifications, because anyone can set up a certificate these days. So how do we train them for tomorrow?
Yeah, for me, obviously, certifications is a must, right? For years we have been getting certifications. There are a lot of entities that we can certificate. But yes, I think the more than certifications, I think in Puerto Rico, for example, we need to change the mindset of the universities and the curriculums that we are, proposing to our users, right? I think there are a lot of entities that are well prepared and updated, right, to the new attendance. But I think there is an opportunity area where we can put some skills or some specific credits or classes where we prepare those engineers to be more competence in the new world, right? Because new engineers, we require people skills. We require not sales skills at all, but at least that skills to really translate maybe a business need into a solution, right? And usually the technical guys are not. Usually what I found in Puerto Rico is that we have a lot of technical guys, but we don't have too much commercial guys or people who can translate that into a solution. So that's why it comes, the people who sales, right? That with the specialty, with the expertise of sales, and we try to train salespeople with technology.
And that's difficult. That's hard, isn't it?
Exactly. So find that sweet spot where we can find people or engineers who can translate that technical thing into a solution in a simple way. That's very difficult nowadays, and it's very important for now because there is a lot of technology in changings, right? So we need to, in order to propose the best technology to the business and propose new ideas in a best way. Sometimes the engineer just follow instructions, right? And they say, okay, whatever the CISO say, I will follow. But those engineers should be able to understand what is happening in the business right now and in the market and say, hey, we can do this, and this is right, and why this, and maybe prepare a business case to propose a new solution or a new change or whatever. But I think the new engineers should be able to do that, right? To prepare a business case and build that pain of the business into a solution.
And push back on those architects who are accused of doing astronaut architects. Because when we have architect panels, and don't tell our moderator from this morning, architects say, nothing's possible until I tell the engineers to do it, which I think is a bit mean, because architects might say, we're going to do this, and the engineers say, it's not possible. And I get that. Maybe engineers are the department of no, the realists and all of that. But that negotiation skill certainly could enable a better relationship.
Exactly, that's the word. That negotiation skill is crucial. Just to be more efficient, right? In the way we are evolving projects and adopting new technology.
And the one of the other reasons it's good to talk to on this is you have a Caribbean or Caribbean, depends which way you want to say it. You have a regional view. So I'm interested, maybe, is what we're discussing here exactly what we'd be discussing all across the region, or is there something special that we should take away from Puerto Rico?
Well, the thing is Puerto Rico is a very special island. You know that we're in Puerto Rico, we are U.S. citizens, and we have, in the Caribbean, we are kind of passing through the same wave of new technology and everything. Talking about Puerto Rico per se, I think even though we have been talking about cloud for years and we have been talking about digital transformation, technology transformation, I think it's the same in around the world, but the COVID and this pandemic, push a lot of things that will benefits the island, right? And a lot of the government and the different industries are finally open their minds and saying, hey, yes, we need to transform, right? We need to things in new technology and other things. And one specific thing that makes Puerto Rico or pushes Puerto Rico into new things was Maria. That we got a hurricane a couple of years that basically pushed us. Well, some customers were more open to adopt the cloud. Some of the customers really were saying that they don't want the cloud at all, or there are different customers, but for sure there are a lot of customers that are thinking different. Then the pandemic came, and then they were like, okay, now is the moment that we need to understand how we are going to enable people to work from anywhere in a secure manner. So Puerto Rico, since we had like that hurricane that was heavily for us, then the pandemic, I think that in Puerto Rico helped a little bit in push that technology transformation and digital transformation a little bit more than other countries in the Caribbean. I'm seeing a lot of customers in for example, in Dominican Republic and Virgin Islands, and they are still like thinking a little bit with a little bit of caution, what they want to move, what they don't, what they want to adopt, right? But for that, it's very important, as I say, understand their people, their culture, and make sure that we propose solutions that really take care of the people, right? We need to talk about security at the end, but if the people don't adopt the technology at the end, then we fail, right, in implementing the technology or any process that we want to implement. So we SoftwareONE, we usually focus a little too much in people, right? Because we understand that at the end, almost all the projects are measured by how the users at the end use the technology, right? We can implement a lot of security, we can implement a lot of things, but at the end, if the user doesn't adopt that, then we are not getting any return of the investment that we are doing. So we need to there are different scenarios in between Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, the other countries in the Caribbean. But yes, I think we are in a good path. Both in the whole Caribbean, everybody is thinking in transformation. So yeah,
I like that, and I am going to try and take the tour to other locations, and many people will be joining us in the Jamaican event that we're doing in a couple of weeks. But yes, I think this is a unique geography, and I'd like to include Puerto Rico panelists on our Miami event, because I think that's a nice synergy. We've already heard, of course, from our moderator, who's in Miami. It's good synergy. What then can we leave our audience by thinking? If we think about tomorrow's leader and their role in improving the security relationship, because all throughout the world, we're seeing MSPs bundling either MSS services or software as a service, XDR, CDR, ZDR, whatever they are, right? But somehow transforming themselves into a security provider. I don't know if the end customer necessarily cares about the distinction between the pure play security and the pure play MSP and all of that. But I would like to think that the end customer cares about the technical acumen of tomorrow's leader. So here's my bigger question. I don't know if it's answerable. How can tomorrow's engineer, yes, he needs more or she needs more, communication skills, but how can they improve that trifecta relationship? How can they be the linchpin between all of these parties?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that there are a lot of new certifications that they can take. We have been talking about technical certifications and all that, but there are a lot of other certifications that they can start looking at, to prepare themselves in that new reality, right? So for me, it's just a matter of keep learning, don't stop learning, and keep preparing, right? Their self to evolve to the new reality, right? Even those the Cesos and the new providers need to transform. For example, SoftwareONE is transforming as well as from a LSP company to an MSP and a service provider company. So it's very important to transform, right? And understand the reality of the technology now, and understand that the technology that we are learning today will be all tomorrow, right? So it's a constant learning, right? We need to keep learning new technologies, and not only technical, but also new ways of as I was saying, negotiation skills, communication skills, people skills, so we can be more dynamic into our role, right? We are engineers, and at the end, that will obviously depends on each people, right? What is the path that they want to drive during his career? But I think as we prepare ourselves as in different skills, we will be more competent in the future, right? No matter which technology comes, then at the end it's a matter of being more competent and stay relevant in the market.
Great sentiment to end on. Be competent, stay relevant. I like that. Well, yes. Luis, big virtual round of applause for you. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope people like this more informal style chat to sort of echo or respond to our bigger panel. I think that's a nice format. And yes, it's lovely to get an engineer's perspective.
No, thank you for having me here, and my pleasure to keep with you, in future events. You can count on me. So thank you, and hugs from Puerto Rico.